Hello there, it's Terry here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I am sharing a one-layer card, well, almost one-layer card, using some products from Picket Fence Studios. So let's get started. Okay, so here is a look at the stamp set that I will be using. I know it's a Christmas stamp, right? And you might think it's crazy, but for some reason, when I saw this gingerbread house, I thought of Halloween. And it's a great way to stretch out your supplies. I think it's well worth it when you can figure out how to use a holiday stamp for more than one occasion. Okay, so to start off my card, I am going in with white cardstock, and I'm using the Picket Fence Hybrid Black ink. And this ink is great because it works with all types of mediums. So it can work with colored pencils, watercolors, and even alcohol markers. So I'm going in and stamping that down onto my white cardstock. And this white cardstock is alcohol marker friendly. The cardstock is 110 pounds from Nina. Okay, I did have to stamp the image down twice just to make sure I got a good impression. And since this card is an almost one layer card, there's going to be quite a lot of masking. So here I'm going in with masking paper and I'm stamping the same image down onto the masking paper. Now going in with my fussy cutting scissors, I went ahead and fussy cut the stamped image out. And after that was cut off, I went ahead and placed it on top of the stamped image onto the white cardstock. Okay, so now it's time to create the background scene. Going in with my life-changing blender brushes and a few colored inks, I wanted to create a spooky night scene. So starting off with a lime green color ink, I went ahead and applied that to the upper right-hand corner of the cardstock. Then going in with a teal shade of ink, I went in and blended that along with the lime green shade. And I wanted to make sure that each color was blending nicely. So you want to make sure that you blend in between the two colors and apply additional ink on top of that if needed. And for a little more drama to the card, I went in with a darker blue shade and blended that along the edges of the card panel. And for the bottom of the gingerbread house, I wanted to create a grounded scene. So going in with some brown ink, I applied that towards the bottom of the cardstock. To add a little more texture onto the card panel, I spread some clean water onto the cardstock. Since the ink is water reactive, the water will oxidize the ink and create a nice little effect onto the card panel. Okay, so to add some more elements onto the card scene, I am going in with the stencil from Picket Fence Studios. This one is the Slimline Welcome to the Graveyard blending stencil. And I really like this because there's all sorts of elements on this stencil that you can use to create a Halloween card. Okay, so for the first part of the scene building, I am going to go in with the grass. So when I'm ink blending or whenever I'm using my stencil, I like using my Make Art station because the magnetic part of the station holds my stencil and paper and everything in place. Okay, and after the grass were blended, I wanted to blend on the witch onto my scene. So first I started with a really dark shade of ink and I blended the witch on. But then I decided that I wanted a little more dimension. So I went in with some paper velvet. And this is also from Picket Fence Studio. And I love this paste because it's not too shiny or it's not too thick. It dries very matted, almost like a velvet texture. And I guess that's why they call it paper glazed velvet. It's really nice. I am using my palette knife to apply that on top of the stencil. Okay, so I went ahead and removed it, and I did let the cardstock dry before going in with the second stencil. So this stencil here is another stencil from Picket Fence Studios. And I really like that this whole stencil fits on an A2 size card. But for my card today, I'm just going in with black ink and just applying the individual bats all over my card panel. And I really like using a small tiny brush for this. It gets into all of the intricate spaces of the stencil. Okay, so now I feel like this is the best part is when you remove the masking paper. And I'm removing the masking paper so I can get started on the coloring process. Okay, so like always, I will go ahead and leave a timestamp down below. So if you're not interested in the coloring part, you can go ahead and forward it to that time. But if you are, I hope you sit back and enjoy. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. Okay, so I'm back. I know that was a lot of coloring, but know many of you guys requested that I created a video to show the process of that, and I wanted to include every bit of it. Okay, so now going in with a second stencil. This one has the tree stencil, and before I start stenciling that tree in, I wanted to go ahead and put my mask back on onto the gingerbread house. Then going in with a dark shade of ink, I'm using Black Suit from the Distress Oxide line, and I'm going in and blending that on. So now to create the frame around my card panel, I am using the Picket Fence Studios 5x7 double stitch rectangle dies. You can use any die that you have on hand, but this is the only one that I have that's 5x7. So I went ahead and ran it through my die cutting machine with black cardstock, and I did that a few times. I think I did that 3 times, and I used liquid adhesive to layer it on top of one another. But before I attached that to the card panel, I wanted to create a little more interest to my card scene. So going in with a white gel pen, I added a lot more details and highlights. Okay, so to create even more interest onto my background scene, I'm going in with the same stencil and I'm using a white pigment ink. And when I'm using a white pigment ink on a blended card panel, I like to apply the pigment ink on a slick surface, because I don't want to contaminate my ink pad. So going in with a small blending brush, I am picking up the ink from the slick surface and applying that on top of my card panel. Okay, so now for the sentiment. I couldn't decide between the sentiments on these 2 stamp sets at first, but then I thought that the stamp set from the Here for the Boo sentiment was perfect. So I went ahead and heat embossed that onto black cardstock with white embossing powder and heat set that with my heat tool off screen. Okay, so now it's time to adhere everything together. So here is the layered frame dies that we cut out earlier out of black cardstock. I went ahead and used liquid adhesive and applied that onto a side folding card base in white. And using liquid adhesive, I also applied that onto the main card panel and placed that on the inside of the card frame. Now with foam squares, I popped up the sentiment. Okay, so for the final touch, I promise, I am going in with the Scary Cat Sequence mix. And I love this mix because it has little black cats, and the black cats is perfect for the card scene. So I went ahead and applied that with liquid adhesive onto my card panel. And that's it. This completes the card. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and please don't forget to thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. And I would love it if you came on over to my Instagram account at Cloudy Coral Designs. Okay, until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.